online retailer and mediate if necessary. And sometimes even if you are not a member, you just want to feedback your case to the Consumer Association. They also have the ability, when there is a huge number of complaints from a certain retailer, they would be able to go to court essentially under the consumers protection legislation that we have to take kind of a class action against them. When you have a defective goods issue and case is not able to resolve it for you, then you can go to the small claims tribunal. And the small claims tribunal is for most online commerce, is very small sum. The situation we have here, I suspect, is actually not a small sum. It's 20 customized dance costumes, which could be, I don't know, hundreds of thousands even. So if that's the situation, then you would have to go to the state courts and hire we needed. Yeah, and I think essentially, whether it's a defective goods situation or undelivered goods, these are your non-legal and your legal options.
Thank you, Dr. Toh. Eunice, do you have anything to add to what Dr. Toh has said?
Yes, thank you, Jill. Just now, Dr. Toh mentioned this idea of a chargeback, right? And I just wanted to explain that in case some of our audience members are not so familiar. A chargeback is a request to your card issuing bank to go to Visa or MasterCard or whoever the card association is and request them to reverse the money that has already been paid to the merchant. So Visa and MasterCard, they have their own dispute resolution guidelines and rules, and there are different categories. So for example, for defective goods or goods not delivered, this might be one of the situations where you could get a chargeback. But of course, under that framework, the merchant also gets a chance to give a response, right? And in that way, if you pay by credit card, you give yourself a bit of extra protection, right? Because you have this avenue of possibly raising a chargeback and succeeding. Right. So one tip for people who wish to make purchases online is to use a credit card rather than a debit card or to make bank transfers. So bank transfers or debit card payments are as good as transferring the cash over. There is no way of getting your money back unless that person willingly gives it back to you, or you go to court like Dr. Toh says, or find some other way to make them do that.
Right.
There is actually another scenario. Of course, it's not here because this is a customized costume situation, but beware that sometimes when you buy something online or in a shop, they are selling you already defective goods. They would tell you something like as is where is, special sale and no refund. So if you happen to get defective goods in this situation, you cannot charge back or anything at all because you were told the price is special because it's a defective goods situation.
Right. So in this case, even though payment has been made and it's 2 weeks later, is the chargeback still an option for Sam?
Yes. So for a chargeback, generally, depending on the situation, but generally you have to make your request within 120 days.
Okay.
So within 2 weeks should be good.
Okay, great. 120 days sounds like a good period of time. Sounds like Dr. Toh and Eunice, you found the solution for Sam over here, right? Perfect.
But actually, maybe we can also talk a little bit about, before Sam entered into this transaction, maybe what are some of the things Sam should have thought about, right?
Yeah.
If this is such an important transaction because there is presumably going to be a dance performance, and if she doesn't get the costumes on time, this has a bigger impact than just whether she has lost money.
Exactly.
Right? So I think in this sort of situation, when you want to purchase something online, it will be very, very important to do some checking, right? Check the reviews, check on the reliability of this seller. What is their capability? Have they delivered on this before? Are you able to reach them? Do they have a customer contact number or a policy of refund that you can find on their website? All this will give you clues as to whether or not you might be able to get help if there is some problem later on.
I would also add that actually, if it's such a big purchase, I would actually not do it online, and it is customized costumes after all. So you do want to see the person and customize it and give the instructions. A big purchase also allows you to pay a deposit or a part payment first, so that you book your deal, so to speak. But at the same time, you don't pay up everything. In fact, a big purchase could even be staged 3 ways. One, a deposit, and one for the substantial portion of it, and the last maybe 10-15% for when I'm finally satisfied. So when I was president of CASE, we used to tell people, if it's a big deal, you need to stage. So renovations contracts, for example, they are big deals. So we teach them always to at least have 2 stages, a deposit and a final payment, but to reserve the last 10% for, if I really have a dispute with you, I'm going to hold on to this 10% till it's all resolved.
Yeah, that's good advice. And I think in this situation, it doesn't actually say whether Ali Costumes is its own website or whether it was a retailer, maybe on some online shopping platform. So what do you think the differences are? Or maybe there are no differences?
Actually, I would say there is a difference. Of course, when you have a physical shop, I can go down to the shop and make a lot of noise, and you hush me up because you don't want the other customers to hear me voicing my unhappiness. If it's online, they are going to take advantage of the fact that it's going to be so inconvenient for you to find them. And maybe they don't even have a physical presence. So you're going to be shouting at the ether, so to speak. It's different. It's very, of course, I know the new generation, people love the convenience of online shopping. It's just one, not that I'm a boomer and I'm, it's conservative, but if it's a big contract, big deal, don't do it online. Small deal, retail commerce, sure, go ahead.
I'd also like to chip in to say that when you are making a purchase through an online platform, it's also a little bit different if you're buying directly from the merchant through their website. Because some online platforms, they allow you to report, right, if there is any defect or if you did not receive a good. And then they have a dispute resolution mechanism. And some of them even will be able to refund you, or they will only pay the seller when you confirm that you have received the goods. So even between all these different platforms, we should also do our homework to see which one suits us best.
Some have got good dispute resolution policies, some don't. They're basically going to say, you dig your own hole and you bury yourself.
Okay. So it's always important for us to do our own research and our own homework on that, right?
You have reviews. I mean, you look at the review, this platform is no good, or this retailer is no good. That's a very basic minimum homework you need to do.
Okay. And I think since this has been discussed briefly, just now Dr. Toh talked about CASE, maybe Dr. Toh and Eunice both, could you share with us what dispute resolution mechanisms are available for online consumers that's not part of the online retailing platform? So Eunice, maybe you want to share a little bit more about what FIDReC does?
Oh, sure, Jill. FIDReC becomes relevant when you are dealing with a financial institution. So this could happen when you make your payment through a credit card or through a bank transfer, when you use a service from your financial institution, and perhaps you have some unhappiness with your financial institution. You think that they should have done better to maybe respond to you when you wanted to stop the payment, or maybe there's some other service issue. This is where FIDReC becomes relevant, because we handle disputes between consumers and financial institutions that are licensed by the MAS in Singapore. So there is no fee at all for you to come to FIDReC and make a claim. And what FIDReC will do is, we are very independent. So we are like a dispute resolution center. So the first thing we do is we will try and find out from the consumer, what is the problem that they have? What are the facts? What has happened that they are unhappy about? Then we will ask the financial institution to give us an investigation report. So we also have their side of the story. And then my team members will try and help both sides to see whether they can come to a settlement, meaning an agreement where both sides can accept and continue and move on. But if you cannot resolve the dispute at mediation, FIDReC still has another stage called adjudication. And in this stage of adjudication, there is an expert. So someone like Dr. Toh, right, who's actually one of the FIDReC adjudicators, a lawyer perhaps, or a retired judge with a lot of experience, they will hear the claim and then they will determine whether or not it is a valid one.
Right.
For adjudication, there is a small fee of $50 per claim, and that is to signify to the consumer that adjudication requires some effort on their part. They have to prepare submissions, they may have to attend a hearing, answer questions from the adjudicator, and so on. And so we have this nominal fee so that they can make their decision in an informed way. Yeah, but FIDReC is really there to support consumers who have disputes with financial institutions. So remember, it's free and there is no impact on your legal rights. So the outcome will only be binding on you if you agree to it.
Right.
Right? If you don't agree, you can always go and find other ways to continue your dispute.
Right.
And as I said earlier on, if you don't have a financial insurance or banking dispute, you still can have mediation. You just go to case, and case will take up your situation with the retailer, and case has mediation facilities too, where essentially a mediation is like you have a referee and you've got two parties who disagree, and so you have the referee who says, okay, this and that, how about this and how about that, and try to work out a win-win situation. You go to court, somebody wins, somebody loses. By mediation, hopefully the mediator who's experienced will bring about a satisfying resolution. And of course, in mediation, there are other options besides compensation, see, because in the court, you talk about damages, it's compensation. But in a mediation, it could be, I mean, as a mediator, I've actually even suggested to people, let's shake hands and have a cocktail party so that we, be friends again. Yeah. And that's not a legal solution. If you are not in the mind to be so nice and kind to your enemy, so to speak, you look at your other party as an enemy. We actually also, Singapore is very good in this whole idea of mediation. In fact, the International Mediation Convention is called the Singapore Convention because we were pushing very hard for it as a country. So Singapore Mediation Center, we have something called the Singapore Mediation Center. Somebody like Ali Costumes is a huge claim, could, instead of going to court, just go to the mediation center. And finally, of course, in Singapore, if you are a retail customer, you can go to the Small Claims Tribunal, where they don't allow lawyers to be present. You can just speak your case, and the system understands that you are really a non-legally trained person, and it will be, in the sense, kinder to you. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, so it sounds from what Eunice said that FIDReC is only for financial institutions. So what is a financial institution? Is PayPal, for example, considered a financial institution?
Oh, well, financial institution would be defined by the Monetary Authority of Singapore, and it will be depending on those that are licensed by them. And a full list of all these different financial institutions are available on the FIDReC website. You can search for them there. I can tell you that PayPal would not be an example of a financial institution that is licensed in Singapore. It is sort of a payment services platform. Currently, MAS doesn't deem that that is a financial institution for FIDReC purposes.
Right.
So in that situation where you have a financial institution, maybe even overseas, right? Or a payment service provider like PayPal, I think Dr. Toh's advice still makes sense. You can try and approach them directly. Legitimate organizations, right? Will have their own dispute resolution mechanism. You can use, probably on their website, they will have a tab or a link for you to click so that you can file your dispute and complaint there.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Toh and Eunice. Dr. Toh, do you have something else to add?
Well, I think with an organization like PayPal, they're internationally known, they are reliable, and they want to remain having that reputation.
Yeah.
So it probably is easier. So if you do transactions with a PayPal mechanism, or even it's Eunice mentioned earlier on about online commercial e-commerce platforms where they have a dispute resolution procedure, it's so much better that you can take the problem you have to somebody who would do some pushing for you, do some negotiation for you. And there is this other idea which not many people are familiar with, and that's the idea of a trust mark. I founded CommerceNet to issue retailers with a trust mark. And the idea here is that a trust mark service provider like CommerceNet has vetted the retailer, has signed them on to certain dispute resolution procedures and certain retailing standards, right? So you cannot deceive, you cannot have deceptive advertising and so on. And then these details are then what the retailer signs on before they get the trust mark. So if you go online and you see that they have a trust mark, Case Trust, Trust SG, Commerce Trust, you are able to say, even if they're not part of a retail platform, you know that somebody will take up cudgels for you. Yeah, and that helps. You're a helpless consumer. Somebody is going to fight for you. Yeah.
We have a number of questions that just came in actually. And I think this must be the topic that's very close to everybody's heart.
Yes.
Because people are asking now, so what about electronic wallets? You know, are these electronic wallets like PayLah, Google Pay, Shopee Pay, I suppose, Singtel Dash, are they all regulated by MAS? I think you mentioned briefly just now, Eunice, this can all be found on the FIDReC website you mentioned just now.
Yes. So I think whether or not you're regulated by MAS is a little bit of a different question on whether or not MAS requires you to subscribe to FIDReC. So there are many different kinds of financial institutions, and MAS also regulates payment services providers. And there is the Payment Services Act in Singapore that governs them, but they are not considered financial institutions that must subscribe to FIDReC, and where FIDReC becomes an available avenue. So there's a little bit of a distinction there. So to answer this question, they would not be FIDReC subscribers, but they are still regulated by MAS. So it's still possible if there is some evidence of misconduct, right? You can also report that to MAS.
So one small catch about this is that for many consumers, they don't realize that the service provider or the retailer is actually out of jurisdiction, not in Singapore. So even MAS has got rules, but they don't need to follow MAS rules because they are based on Russia, Ukraine, or some other place. That MAS cannot reach. So you also need to do your bit of homework to see that before you use the services of these financial institutions, so to speak. They are within the jurisdiction of Singapore. So PayPal is, for example, right? So at least you know that even if it's not a FIDReC institution, it's still regulated by MAS, and that's important. And that's also another reason that a lot of these like crypto wallets and all that, they pretend they are regulated by MAS, and they may have some kind of Singapore address or whatever, but you need to check, do your homework, because they may not necessarily be in Singapore.
So to get the definitive list of entities that are regulated by MAS, on the MAS website, www.mas.gov.sg, there is a financial institutions directory. So even if that institution, right, that wallet provider, they say regulated by MAS, you can always confirm against the MAS website.
Right. And I think one last question about FIDReC. Eunice, as CEO, I guess people are asking, do you have any plans to, include some things under FIDREC's jurisdiction? Is that something that you can decide?
Well, unfortunately, it's not something I can decide. It will be something that the Monetary Authority of Singapore and our board of directors will have to work on. We are doing a review of the scope of FIDREC's work, and as soon as there are updates, we will definitely announce that to the public.
I think everybody's looking forward to it. So thank you, Dr. Toh and Eunice. If we have nothing else to add, then we can move on to the next scenario. Okay. Jamie bought a gym package for 3 months using Aloha. Aloha allows a purchaser to pay only 30% of the gym package price at the point of purchase and then pay the remaining 70% in the next 2 months. However, after using the gym for 1 month, Jamie runs into some financial difficulties and would like to stop at 1 month and cancel his gym membership for the next 2 months. Dr. Toh, can you tell everyone about Jamie's options?
Well, I think first I want to say generally that there are many buy now, pay later kind of schemes and with different legal consequences. So something not very common in Singapore, there's something called a lay-by, where you pay your installments and after the installments are done, you take your goods and bring them home. Or you have a hire purchase where from the very first day, you can take it home and there is a hire purchase contract regulated also by our government authorities. You are protected, your rights and liabilities. And the other more, entrepreneurs are always finding new ways of persuading you that you can afford what you can't afford, right? So they'll say, buy now, pay later. And here is this $3,000 vacuum cleaner, pay $100 and you have it, But then the small print comes in, that's 30% interest, 60% interest. And you begin to pay for it in a very, very big way, and it's something you will regret. So when I was a president of Consumers Association, I'm sure now too, a lot of people, this buyer's regret, you bought something you really can't afford and now you want to renege on it, and very often you can't. So, but our Singapore legislation is very, very pro-consumer in that we have, for example, we've got the Hire Purchase Act and we've got the Consumer Fair Trading Act and so on. What happens then in a situation, there are other situations like, for example, you pay through a credit card and the seller allows you 3 installments, but the moment you fail to pay 1 installment, the interest is very high. Or your very common now, buy now, pay later scheme, your Grab's pay later, your many other schemes, right? You actually need to be very careful about looking at the small print, and you other than high interest, there are things that you need to do to say maybe even terminate the whole deal and so on. Yeah, penalties and so on.
Eunice, you walked us through the available dispute resolution mechanisms just now. So in this case, where would be the best place be for Jamie to go to resolve this issue?
Okay, so for Jamie, what Jamie has done is she has bought a gym package, right?
Yes.
We are not sure how Jamie paid for this gym package.
Yes.
Yeah? If Jamie had paid using a credit card, we do see some of these cases at FIDReC. For instance, where previously, the number of gyms closed down, right? Although they sold membership packages. We saw some of these cases come to FIDReC because the consumer said that they went to the bank and asked the bank to stop the payment, but the bank did not. So they complained against the bank. So that is one option, but actually based on what Dr. Toh has shared, right? In this sort of situation, it's also difficult for the bank to give compensation because even if you have used a credit card to pay and you are still paying, you haven't paid the full amount, but in that contract where you have purchased, the obligation is already there. So later when you change your mind, it's difficult to blame the bank unless the bank is responsible in some way. Because as a card issuing bank, their role is really to follow your instructions and process the payment. So that is one option, although based on what Dr. Toh has shared about the arrangements of this scheme, unless there's some very mitigating circumstance or sympathetic circumstance, may be difficult to resolve. Well, the next thing that Jamie can do is to go to case, like Dr. Toh has shared, right? And case can do their best. Maybe there's others like Jamie as well facing the same situation. And case can, on the behalf of this group of consumers, approach the gym and try and see whether the gym can do something for them. If the gym is, able to, maybe they can offer something, right? Like Dr. Toh says, it may not be financial, but maybe something else. For Aloha, can Jamie go and sue Aloha, right? Then again, this will depend on the contract that Jamie has with Aloha. What are the terms that Dr. Toh had told us we have to be very careful to look at? Yeah. Generally, I don't think it is possible to stop halfway and then, return. Right? And in this situation, it's a gym package. So it's not as if you can return and say, I did not use it.
There are scenarios where, for example, you want to continue, you have a package, but the gym is closed down. COVID, a lot of things closed, gyms included. So going to case has this benefit in that if it is an organization, a gym, a shop, whatever it is that's still existing, case is able to consolidate all the cases and therefore have greater bargaining power with the retailer. But if the retailer has disappeared, then everybody's going to be crying because that's all you can do. And they've disappeared. You can't chase them, whether they're physical or not. They can disappear. But our scenario here is different. It is a person, Jamie, who has run into difficulties. As I said earlier on, the best thing you can do is go back to the retailer, the gym company, and say, hey, I cannot do it anymore. I want to terminate. Reading the small print, very often you can't terminate, right? But whatever you have used, okay, you bought a 3-month package and you have 1 month has passed, even if you didn't use it, you have to pay for that 1 month. But perhaps you can, going forward, say, okay, I'm stopping the next 2 months. I will pay the penalty, I'll pay the interest, I'll pay the whatever administrative fee. That's already something I signed up for. Yeah, you can do all that.
Okay. We have a question here. I think it changes the scenario a little bit. It says, if the gym closes, but the bank account that you have given the gym for the deduction of the fees is not closed, will deduction continue from my account?
I think very often it depends on your contract with your bank. But of course, again, you know that the bank has the money, and if you don't tell them anything, they have been instructed to pay, and they will pay. They don't know that the gym has closed down, or this is a fraud case and the fraud has run away to Thailand or whatever it is. So you need to tell the bank and very quickly react, very quickly go down to the bank and say, please stop this instruction because the gym has disappeared. So a lot of self-help is needed. You don't just say, I'm going to sue the bank. No, the bank acts on your instructions and you didn't give them any alternative or counter instruction. But the other thing, again, going back to platforms, now there are platforms, Atome, Hula, where, and I mentioned Grab Pay Later, you actually have a reliable platform where they would have dispute resolution procedures. You can also go back up to them and say, hey, I signed up something under your platform and I want to activate this dispute resolution platform term. And sometimes, depending on the platform, I'm not here to promote platforms, so I won't name names, but there are some platforms who will give you maybe a goodwill pay, refund, whatever it is. So things like that are possible. And of course, if you have a buy now, pay later scheme, it's good to look for a platform that does nice things like that, refund you at least something, out of the package you pay.
Yeah. And I think with that, let's go to our last scenario before the Q&A. To our audience members, we see the questions that you have been submitting, and we will address them at the Q&A segment. Okay. Min is a graphics designer, and he needed a particular editing software, Dotty, for his current project. So he signed up for a free 1-month trial. As part of the sign-up process, Min had to provide his credit card details, which will be charged if he does not cancel his 1 week trial before the end of the month. Sorry, 1 month trial. Min then forgot to cancel the trial and subsequently discovered that his credit card had been charged for 12 months of using Dotty. When he contacted his bank, they informed him that he has to check with Dotty. However, when he contacted Dotty, they told him to check with his bank. Dr. Toh, in this case, what can Min do?
Okay, so one piece of good news I like to give to all those who are in this kind of scenario where you have a 3-month trial and you forgot to cancel, and so now it's activated for the next 3 years or whatever it is. Not scary. As I said, Singapore legislation is very consumer friendly, and we have something with a long title. It's called the Consumer Protection Fair Trading Opt-out Practices Regulations of 2009. Let's call them the regulations, right?
Okay.
And under these regulations, the retailer is obligated to give you notice 3 to 14 days before the trial is ended to remind you, hey, if you don't answer now, it automatically kicks in. You're going to pay for the rest of the package, so to speak. And so the regulations say that if the retailer doesn't give you this reminder, then you have rights to get a full refund. And this is something that is very protective of the consumer. Again, in an online situation, it could well be a case where the retailer is not in Singapore. It's a software provider, and software can be provided, as I say, from Russia, Philippines, Venezuela, and yeah, you may have a case regulations. I mean, the consumer protection regulations, but it's not going to apply to them. So the best thing to do in situations like this, I always tell people, it's your cyber hygiene. In other words, learn to play safe, learn how to keep yourself safe. And very simple tip, mark on your calendar. Now you've got Google Calendar, you can set an alarm, you can whatever, set an alarm for the day before. Don't do it the day itself. For the day before my free trial ends, please cancel.
Yes, that's a very good tip.
And then you will never forget, right? Because they give you the condition right at the beginning. If you don't, and you need to, again, look at the small print. Maybe they say you have to cancel 3 days before. Okay, then you set your alarm 5 days before, right? So you give your notice in time. Other than that, I think the other thing about safe practice is, of course, you as case president, I always tell people, if a deal is too good to be true, it's too good to be true. So don't go for it. Yeah, they'll tell you, free trial, and actually at the end of the in somewhere inside the terms and conditions, they have something that takes back the free trial. It's basically, if you, let's say in this case, software, right? If you start to sell the products of this editing software, then we will kick in a full charged payment. It's no longer a free trial, because now you're using our free software to edit something for sale. Then straight away the condition is no more free, it is chargeable at this rate. So you need to read a small print, and you might have already given away your free trial because you violated the conditions in the sense that you did a commercial deal.
Yeah, and just to add to what Dr. Toh has shared, so Dr. Toh shared a few good tips, right? Set your calendar reminder, and when to set, you must read the terms and conditions so that you know when to set the calendar reminder. And I would also add that maybe from the perspective of trying to avoid problems from arising, right? If we have gone through the terms and conditions, we make sure that we look out for things like whether you can cancel the trial, how long beforehand that you must cancel. And if you notice that, these online agreements, they usually have this checkbox for you to tick off. If things are pre-checked for you, pay special attention to those, right? Because if you check it's as good as you sort of
Agree.
signing off to say that I agree to
Right.
this, right? So it's a bit, we might find it a bit of a hassle, and it's not like there's a right or a wrong way of doing this. But we must, as consumers, try our best to protect ourselves. So if you notice a lot of pre-checked boxes, be very careful and make sure you know what you are agreeing to with those boxes. And finally, I would also say, monitor your credit card statements, right? If you're paying by credit card regularly, there are instances where you thought you have cancelled, then the payments still get deducted and you may not realize. So it's always important to monitor your statements and check that truly the deductions have stopped. Yeah.
And I would say keep the records of those transactions you have cancelled, your bank has acknowledged. You need to keep it so that if ever there is a dispute, you can say, I have this record of the transaction being cancelled, so the bank will have to pay you back if they have not cancelled actually. But I think going back to good practices, the first good practice is read the small print of the free trial. For example, you can say it may say that this is a 1 week free trial. I mentioned one scenario where if it's commercial, then you start paying us within the free trial, within a period of free trial. Or it could say that, and if you don't tell us 3 days before that you're going to cancel, we will be sending our next package onto you. Right? And we're sending you the next bill. I actually had to handle a case, not software, but cosmetics. A consumer actually signed up for a free trial of cosmetics, and it's small print says, and if you don't say anything, we'll send on every month the same package. And by the time she discovered, this was like the second month, it's like, I thought I canceled. Why am I still getting a second package? And so the idea then is to send back the package. But then they will say, yeah, you can send back the package, but you pay the cost of sending it all the way back to Timbuktu.
Yeah, that's right.
And most consumers will say, I don't even know where Timbuktu is. How do I pay to send it back?
Yes.
So in the end, you will end up, even if you cancel the free trial, you're still paying for the next month or maybe the next package.
That's right. Eunice, just now you mentioned that we should be on our guard, right? And read all of this, like little fine prints, what we check and what we don't check. So there is a question here that says, how do we prevent reading long terms and conditions for using free software online? Because I'm sure, and this question says as well, many neglect, right, reading such terms, and they're not maybe tech savvy enough to understand. So what do we do then in such scenarios?
The problem is real, I must say, because it's a lot to scroll through, right? But I think you can look out for key things, right? So I think if you are concerned about cost, right, then you look out for what are the payment terms, whether you can cancel the trial, how much it will cost, is it auto-renewed, and so on. If you are concerned about whether or not your data is protected and whether using a free trial, that means you give up some of your data, then look out for clauses like that. The truth is, like Dr. Toh says, nothing is truly free, right? And so it is a matter of judgment by a consumer, whether you think it is worthwhile to give up certain things to benefit from a short period of free trial, right? Or do you think it's better to purchase the product directly without having to maybe give up your personal information and so on?
See, when Eunice said nothing is for free, this is something I tell people all the time too. You think you got something for free? No, you actually paid for it with your life, because you give your personal details, your name, your passport or whatever, your credit card number, and they can sell it to somebody else even if they don't use it. So nothing is for free, not even Facebook. Yeah. Okay. It's not free. You give away your life. But what you need to do is, as Eunice mentioned very clearly, very important. Most of us will click and say, don't read, right? But the thing you must read when you do a free trial is, what are the conditions of the free trial? Yeah. I can use it anyhow, or I can use it for commercial deals, or I can whatever, right? There will be limitations. Secondly, what is important, as Eunice has mentioned, is you need to look at how, if I want to cancel, maybe even the second month I'm willing to pay, but it really sucks. The third month I want to cancel. You must look at the conditions on termination, cancellation and termination. And at least you know what those are. And I guess another safety tip you need to bear in mind is that if it's something nobody has heard of, okay, a brand, Dotty, I've never heard of it, so I'm not going to sign up for it, no matter how free it is. And it comes from a dubious country. I won't name the countries, but you know who are the dubious countries. This guy, he runs his business, Dotty, from a dubious country. Don't. And more importantly, do they have reviews? The reviews are there for your safety. And the reviews say this software sucks, this problem is there, and I wrote to them and they never answered me and now they have disappeared. Why do you want to sign up for a free software like that? The reviews are so bad, just ignore it. There are other softwares, software companies with good names where you know that the products will not be dubious. And they have free trial, then go for it.
So it sounds like we do still have to put in the work on our end, right? To always do our research or, scan through at least the fine print. There's just really no free lunch in the world, I think.
No free lunch. Maybe free coffee, yes. Come to my office, I'll give you free coffee.
I have a cheeky question here. So it says, it says the gym, but I think it can apply for this particular scenario as well. So does the gym or, Dotty in this case lose out if the person who signs up puts a stop to the credit card that is doing the installment plan? So I suppose when they say put a stop, it means perhaps canceling the credit card. Then in that case, is that a solution to this person's problems?
I think as Eunice has mentioned earlier on, sometimes it may be too late to activate the chargeback, or the conditions for chargeback have already been, what's the word? You no longer can charge back.
Yes.
The bank says these are the terms and conditions,
Yes.
and you already failed them. I think more importantly is that first, be very skeptical. I'm a very skeptical man. If it's free, I don't believe it's free, right? And if it's really, really free, then look at the conditions of when it stops being free. Sometimes there may be a big word that says 1 month free trial, but small print, actually it's only 1 week. But 1 month is, if you are a grandmother, 75 years old, we'll give you for free for 1 month. Some unattainable condition, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, just to add on to that also, I think this consumer is quite creative, right? Trying to think of a way to self-help, right? Maybe the bank doesn't want to stop my payment. I just cancel my credit card. I cancel my account. There are some risks to that because if you do not pay, right, it could well be that the debt grows, interest is charged on you, and one day you might find yourself liable for a huge sum and a debt collector coming after you.
Yeah, and bankruptcy proceedings perhaps, because your debt has grown so big plus interest and all that. Yeah.
So I would like to sound a word of caution on that kind of a method as well. Yeah. So if the contract is such that you owe the money, right? The payment is just allowing you to pay by installment, but actually the bank has already paid the full sum for you, right? And the arrangement is for you to pay back the bank slowly. If you were to cancel suddenly, you might be faced with these interest charges, late payment charges, and so on.
Right.
I think when I was president of CASE, I had to deal with situations where some companies would send you goods, particularly goods, send you things that you never ordered and you happily use them, and then you get a shock when the bill comes and say, you've been using our thing and now pay up. And if you don't pay up, they can sue you in court, right? A book, I sent you a book, I sent you a magazine, you didn't pay, so now I'm suing you and sending a debt collector. And this same situation is still going to be the same when it's a service, it's a software, it's a movie. I have sent you this movie, you've downloaded it, you've watched it many times. I sent it to you doesn't mean it's free. I said very clearly, this is chargeable, but you can terminate within 3 days of my sending it to you, and therefore you don't need to pay. But since you've been using it for a month, pay up for what you used.
Okay, I think with that, let's segue into our Q&A session. I think there are a number of questions here that have come in. Since we were talking about case, Dr. Toh, I think there's one question here that says, does the case trust mark, since it started, has it been seen to minimize consumers' loss?
It minimizes the situations where a scammer can take you for a ride, because a trust mark like case trust is very carefully issued. So in case of case trust, they would go and vet, and for example, for packages on beauty salons and gyms and all that, they would actually require these companies to pay for insurance, so that if there's a claim, the insurance policy will kick in. So there are many checks and balances, therefore, that a trust mark will impose on the member, right? The trusted member. So that's one thing. And if, of course, somebody can sign up for a case trust or any other trust mark and then break the violation, violate the terms and conditions, then number one, the trust mark provider would terminate them and blacklist them and maybe publicize, don't ever go to the. So once your name, unless you're a real scammer, you don't want your name to be blacklisted forever, right? And secondly, as I said, like in case trust, they would also find, in this case, this fraud, is deception. They would bring your case to the prosecutors for you to be prosecuted. Easier with a physical shop, harder with a online. And so again, remember, the online seller could well be pretending to be a Singaporean with Singapore name and all that, and they are actually some scammer in Nigeria or whatever it is.
That's right. And when we are still on case, so what is the criteria? There's that case blacklist, right? So what is the criteria for a company to appear on the blacklist?
A lot of things have gone wrong. A lot of complaints are unresolved.
Right.
I used to be bolder because I guess I'm a lawyer. I would tell them, if you don't change your practices, if you don't change your advertisements, I will call a press conference. I remember my first press conference, 3 furniture companies were blacklisted and said, we will sue you. I said, go ahead, make my day. I'm a lawyer. But I think at the end of the day, most good businesses don't want, even if it's not defamatory, they don't want any kind of adverse publicity. Even the publicity of you were rude to me or you were very unreasonable. People don't like that. And if they're legitimate businesses.
So maybe let's talk a bit more about FIDReC now, since we are on the topic of, dispute resolution mechanism. So somebody has asked, is FIDReC similar to the Small Claims Tribunal?
Well, FIDReC is quite different from the Small Claims Tribunal, mainly because the Small Claims Tribunal is like a court, right? It is set up by a piece of law, and the Small Claims Tribunal judges, their decisions have the power of law. Whereas FIDReC is something that exists outside the court system. We are what we call alternative dispute resolution center, meaning you try and settle your dispute privately, amicably. And so that is one big difference. So if at FIDReC you do not get the outcome that you are happy with, you can still go on to the Small Claims Tribunal if you meet the conditions for bringing a claim there. So just as a note for those who may not be familiar, the Small Claims Tribunal has a monetary limit, and they also only hear certain kinds of cases, mainly relating to contract for goods and services.
Dr. Toh, do you have anything to add to that?
I would add that actually where FIDReC is concerned, Eunice has mentioned that, but I want to emphasize that the advantage of going to dispute resolution, if you have a financial industry kind of a dispute, is that the bank or the insurance company, the financial industry party is bound by the adjudicator's decision. So if I sit as an adjudicator and I say the insurance company must pay $100,000 to the consumer, the bank is bound But if the consumer says, no, I don't think that's enough for me, I'm not happy with the 100,000, the consumer can then go on to court. 100,000, you cannot go to small claims tribunal anymore. Anyway, there's a 20,000 limit. So I would say that even if something is less than the small claims tribunal, and you feel that you've got this earth-shaking case that you want to go to courts and have it set down as a precedent to teach all the other scoundrels a lesson, you can go ahead. You've got the money, go ahead. Yeah.
And then what about the case where DBS was hacked and money was lost? So is this something that we can bring to FIDReC?
We have seen a number of these cases where I think to be more accurate, it wasn't the DBS that was hacked, but there were some scammers who tried to impersonate DBS or OCBC or some other banks, and they try and fish for your bank information, and sometimes consumers unwittingly provide. We have some of these cases at FIDReC. In fact, most of the claims against banks relate to fraud and scams. And we can usually try and conclude these cases at mediation, because at mediation, like Dr. Toh says, it's not about who is right or who is wrong. But perhaps if there are very sympathetic circumstances, the bank might make a goodwill offer to say, well, considering you are a very, very good customer, right? And then maybe this is an elderly person, not so familiar with the technology, but a good customer for many years. Maybe the bank might say, okay, I waive a portion. So maybe you bear 60%, I'll bear 40 or 70-20, or however the split is. It may be possible to negotiate for something like that. But then again, I must also caution that we can't take that for granted. And we as consumers must also exercise our responsibility, because the Monetary Authority of Singapore has come out to say that it is not standard practice for banks to reimburse their customers who are scammed. And customers have a responsibility to do a number of things. Number one, you need to monitor your notifications. Banks send notifications when payments are made. And if you don't act on that, right, or you ignore it, and then a day or two later, you try and complain, the bank can well say that you have failed in some of your responsibilities as well. Right. So number one, monitor your notifications. Number two, make sure your details with the bank are updated. The bank will never know if you have moved house or changed your mobile number or changed your email address unless you notify. And hence, this is our responsibility to always keep our personal contact details updated. And I think the third thing to remember is that banks are not going to send us these clickable links anymore in our emails or SMSs. So do avoid clicking on such links. Always check and try and deal with your online transactions through the official app that you download from the apps, the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, right? This is quite a secure way at the moment, right? And if you want to follow a link, right, it's a bit dangerous. Safer if you want to use the internet browser to go and search for the official website and go there rather than rely on links.
And actually, when you look at these links, these email addresses, you need to be a little more eagle-eyed, because you get something from Microsoft.com. Actually, it's Microsoft.com, and you think it's Microsoft. You didn't read properly. Or the SOFT is actually S0FT. Some of you may not realize that the Russian alphabet uses some of the Latin alphabet, but when something is Amazon is AMA, right? And they actually put alpha, which is the Greek alpha rather, or the Russian alpha rather than the English language, the Latin alphabet A. So you get misled into thinking, at a quick glance, it looks like Amazon.com, and you click and or you get something, an email from the government, your SingPass has been violated. Please change the password and please tell, we are going to send you an OTP, send back the OTP and all that. It's actually mysingpass.ru. And no, sorry, that's not the Singapore SingPass link. So you need to be careful about reading carefully, even if something really looks like, wow, this is real. This is from SingPass, the government, right? No, it's not. And one more thing that people don't actually realize is it could be singpass.gov.sg / something else. It's the last bit that you have to look at, not the front part. It does look like singpass.gov.sg / but the real site is the last few letters at the back is something, I mean, Putin.ru, you know. But you saw my you saw singpass.gov.sg and you think it's a real one. It's not.
I think when we are online, we always have to be very careful. And now going back to, the heart of the online shopping question, we have some people asking, what should I do if I purchase a genuine item, but upon receiving it, it turns out to be a fake or, it's a pirated version? Then what can I do?
One thing that happens is this is where you should try and buy, especially expensive items like Rolex and stuff like Gucci. Buy from the actual retailer or the licensed retailer, and not from some website that could well be a scammer's website. It sets up all these beautiful pictures of Gucci at really dirt cheap price. Again, like I said, if it's too good to be true, it's not true, right? But there are people who say, no, this is very real because my friend bought from the same website and they got a real Rolex. It could well be, the first few cases, they send you a real Rolex, then they have hooked you in, then they start reeling you in, and the other, after you paid $500,000 for your next Rolex, you are kissing your $500,000 goodbye.
Yeah. Yeah, and so this question is about purchasing something that turns out to be fake, right? If you can get a hold of the seller, right? There's a possibility you try and negotiate. But a lot of the times when you buy things online, it is buyer beware. Meaning you look at it, it might be labeled, the description of the product might be Gucci bag. But actually, if you look at the detailed item description, maybe it says something else, right? That if you read carefully, you would realize it is not a genuine product. Right? In those sort of circumstances, if you had bought through a platform with a dispute resolution mechanism, and they allow you to raise a dispute, and perhaps they have held back payment until you have confirmed receipt of the good, then there might be an avenue for you. So in a way, what Dr. Toh had said earlier also, be familiar with your online purchasing platform apps. There are those, and actually the Ministry of Home Affairs, the government has done sort of a rating, right? To see which ones are more, meet more of the criteria for having a reliable dispute resolution process. We will be sharing that link for everyone to take a look. Yeah, so if we are familiar and we use these reputable platforms, that gives us a better chance of recovery. But always remember, buyer beware.
One of the things coming up in the future, and we always look to the hope of the future, with goods that need to be real, so to speak, right? You buy a Gucci, you buy a Rolex, you want a real Rolex, real Gucci, especially if you pay good money for it. In the future, with blockchain technology, you can actually have a certificate of title issued by the original manufacturer that cannot be tampered with even online. So you ask for the blockchain certificate of title. There are already actually sites that do that. They send you, for example, they sell NFTs and they give you a certificate of title on the blockchain. Other than that, buy from reputable sellers. Don't buy from people you don't even have never heard of. Yeah, now we got people who are in the news, right? And the other thing about buying expensive things online is it's not so difficult to go to the shop to check. Even if you buy a Gucci and you got a description. You go to the Gucci shop. You don't need to buy from the Gucci shop. You just go to the retailer and say, hey, have you got this model? And you might find that actually those who know Gucci will say, no, this is not a model that Gucci sells at all. So you've been scammed right from the start.
And then, so what happens then if you have already purchased it, right? And then, for example, from a website or platform that we are all familiar with, Carousel, right? So then, can we go to case in that case?
The first thing you need to do, as I said, the step-by-step procedure, right? First, go to the retailer, then go to the platform, then go to case, then go to court. And yeah, Carousel is a well-known platform. They would want to protect their name. But again, looking at the terms and conditions, I would say each online platform, Carousel, Shopee, Lazada, whatever, they all have different terms and conditions. And if you haven't got time to read, go and ask your friends who know which are the ones that really help you when you are in trouble. Which are the ones that just don't care. Go ahead, do what you can. We are not interested in helping you.
I have another question here, which I think might be quite interesting for us to think about. What about tours? I'm guessing since we are on online shopping that you register for and pay online. We pay upfront, right, for the package. But then during the trip itself, the guide keeps telling us that we need to pay this additional charge and that additional charge. Then what happens then? What's our recourse?
Usually, even if it's an online retailer, Expedia, whatever, they would have their dispute resolution terms and conditions. So you try and raise it with them and say, look, you have this tour that was on your platform and it said that's all I pay, and in the end I found I had to pay much more. They themselves may not know that their own guide is charging all the extra. He's making money on the side. So once you raise that issue and they can resolve it, and maybe they can come back and say, yes, very sorry, we have to apologize for that. That was not what we authorized. We'll refund you the money. So with a good platform, whether it's a tour or a product, once you are able to prove your case, you got the documentation, you got the receipts, and he said, look, I was asked to pay. This is the receipt issued by your tour guide. Yeah, you might be able to get some recourse.
And I think a reminder from what Dr. Toh says for all of us is to keep records. Because if you want to raise a dispute later, you need to be able to show that you have paid, right? So whenever you are asked to make some payment, keep your receipts, keep your records. And nowadays, right, we can always, have our phones handy, right? You can always take a screenshot. You can send a message to confirm that you have made that payment. So these are just little ways that we can protect ourselves in case something goes wrong. It's much easier than if you just have to rely on what you say and what the other person says.
And of course, if this guy is a crooked tour guide, you still, and it refuses to give you a receipt, you can still say, okay, can you speak into my, I want to record your charge, right? You please tell me what am I paying for, and you have it recorded. And if they have an email address, you can send Eunice's confirmation message. I've paid you $20 for this additional cost. Please confirm that you received it.
Yeah. So always keep the receipts. Seems to be the moral of the story.
Obviously, if a tour guide says, I want to charge you something, but I cannot give you a receipt.
Alarm bells.
Very, very big alarm bell.
Okay.
And red flag.
Yeah, red flag. So what about in cases, when we are online shopping, sometimes we have electronic wallets, and then sometimes our electronic wallet details get stolen. Then what should we do in that kind of situation?
I think the first thing you do is you quickly terminate your wallet. Whatever is lost, and change all your passwords, change all your details. If it's based on a card, change the card, replace everything that needs to be replaced, and change your passwords. Besides that, even before that, I think some of my friends do it very well. They have got dedicated card for online commerce, and so it's so much easier. Otherwise, it's your your card that you use for everything else, then you got to so the hassle of cancelling every single gyro or whatever you have on the card, you know.
That's
So
good advice. Yeah.
And maybe just to think about how we can avoid our e-wallet details getting stolen. I think one practice that the cybersecurity agency recommends is to always enable your two-factor authentication.
Yes.
So this will mean that even if someone has your username and password, they might not have that second level of authentication, right? Sometimes there's a PIN sent to your email or to your phone. So always enable two-factor authentication. Another thing is generally try to avoid storing your credit card information online. Okay, there is always a risk of loss of data, of some breach, some hacking. We read about it all the time. Avoid where possible. Okay, and another thing is to be safe, right? Never do your transactions over public unsecured Wi-Fi. Right. This leaves you open for having all your data and information stolen. So although it's convenient, right, to tap on public Wi-Fi, don't do your transactions on there, right? Use your mobile plan, right? It's a secure kind of a transaction.
One thing that people sometimes do without thinking is you enter in your credit card details and you're making a payment, and then some pop-up comes up and say, would you like to save this? Because if you save it, it's convenient for next transaction, right? You don't need to key in all the details anymore. It will automatically enter your credit card number, expiry date, and all that. Don't do that. Even if it's going to be inconvenient, the second time you got to key in all 16 numbers of your credit card or whatever it is, do that every time fresh. Because if you click save, somebody else can hack in and take it away from you. So don't save anything, like Eunice says. But some other people, actually, they may not save it, but they keep their password record online on a cloud, maybe a document, and that cloud document itself can be hacked. So somebody will have a heyday to see all your details and all your passwords on your cloud stored documents, right?
Thank you. And I think something else, another question just popped up, quite interesting. So does FIDReC and CASE, I suppose, have statistics of the past year of the total number of disputes as a result of phishing or any, online kind of transactions? Because it does seem like, online transactions or the digital life seems to add so much additional stress to buyers.
Well, I'm no longer in CASE, but I can tell you CASE does keep records of that.
Okay.
And they are working very hard with MAS and the police to have a database of known scammers. And now we have this Scam Shield app that GovTech has issued, which will keep you informed of the latest number or the latest scammer.
Oh, this is my first time hearing about the Scam Shield app. So is it like an app you download on your phone? Oh.
You download on your phone, and this, of course, is a database of existing scammers.
Right.
So any new scammer won't be on it, right?
Yeah.
But the other thing you can do with Scam Shield that I'm doing is every time you get a phone call or a message that is a scam, you can use that app to report it. You key in the number or the email address that you received the scam call from and a brief description, right? Caller tried to impersonate the ministry of whatever. And that goes into that database. So this can really help us to help others, We receive so many of these, and yes, it may be easy for the scammers to just set up a new account, right? But let's make it more difficult for them. We report everyone that comes our way.
Makes them work hard for their scams.
Yeah, and if it seems like there's already an existing database, then let's contribute to that, right?
Yes, let's add on to that database,
Yes. Okay, more questions about FIDReC now. How does FIDReC manage blockchain transactions and investments over investment portals?
Okay, so maybe I answer the question about whether FIDReC keeps statistics first, and then I will go on to this one about blockchain and investments. So we will release an annual report every year in November, and we will show the the categories of disputes that come to FIDReC. Fraud and scams are one such category, and you'll be able to see from the statistics. Generally, it is consistent with what the police have also released, that there is a trend of increasing number of scams, of increasing value. In terms of disputes around investments on the blockchain, it will depend on where you purchased your investment from. So if you were investing with a licensed financial institution that is a subscriber of FIDReC, then FIDReC will be able to handle that dispute. And through that process I described of mediation and adjudication, the consumer can try to make a claim. But if the organization is not in Singapore, right? So offshore investment company, that is where we actually get a number of inquiries from people who want to try and make a claim at FIDReC against these entities, but there is no way that FIDReC can contact them. They do not respond to us. We are really unable to help, right? We are not, we don't have any powers of the police or of MAS there. And in fact, I should sound a warning, because we have also noticed that some websites, they are, purport to be some investment company, whether cryptocurrency or blockchain, and they have a section of FAQs, and they say, if you have a dispute, you can contact FIDReC. But you can't. They are not a licensed financial institution in Singapore. So I think even our FIDReC name, just like when they try and purport to be licensed by MAS, all this you have to check, right, and confirm. For MAS, confirm against the MAS list of financial institutions on the MAS website. And for FIDReC, we also have a list of FIDReC institutions on our website.
It's very bold of them to say that they are being, governed by FIDReC when they are not. Wow. Okay. I see. And so, just now, Eunice, you were talking about the overseas point. So I have a question over here. It says, if an overseas seller claims to have a permanent establishment in Singapore, does that make the buyer feel more comfortable or less, or maybe no different?
I think very quickly, they may have an address in Singapore, it may be an HDB flat. So what? No use. The important thing is they have a Singapore address that runs a company that they say they are running, right? So you can do that with ACRA check. But more importantly, they have assets in Singapore. You can have a $2 company. It's no use when you sue them for even your $20 claim. They can't even pay because they are a $2 company. No assets in Singapore. So what's the use? And in fact, because it's online, they probably are residing in some country that the police cannot catch anyway.
So when Dr. Toh says the ACRA search, right, this is also a reputable government site, right? You go to, is it acra.gov.sg?
I believe so.
Yeah. And then you can do a
ACRA,
check
by the way.
Yeah, ACRA, that's right.
Seems like there's no running away. We just have to do our own research all the time. Right?
I don't take people's words as, gospel truth, because yes, they may actually have a Singapore address. It doesn't mean anything.
And how do we deal with, I think there's a question here. I'm not sure how we can think about this from the perspective of an online kind of transaction, but how do we deal with retailers who pressure consumers to sign up, into packages? I'm trying to think about this from an online perspective, perhaps in the form of the trial, where they pressure you or they trick you in a sense. Is there any way that we can safeguard ourselves against this kind of thing?
Let me tell you a quick story. My daughter, obviously being a daughter of former KISS president, has been well trained. There are some real freebies, right? You go to Clementi Town Center or Yishun Town Center, they give you a card and say, come to the shop. This is a $198 package, but we're giving it for $5. Just come. So my daughter would pick up a card and go, because a physical shop, and this is the card, your offer is free, right? While you're in there, they'll try and sell you something or upsell your package or whatever it is. My daughter will say, finish what you do first, then I talk. Then when it's finished, she goes out. Bye. She doesn't care anymore. So she got her freebie, but she didn't get pressured. The important thing is when you do that, you protect yourself from pressure. All of us we feel bad about disappointing somebody. And this happens in real life a lot. We used to have people going down Orchard Road and say, take this free gift. And once you got it, you say, but to keep this gift, it must come for a 90-minute presentation. And you go to some shop and then they grill you for 3 hours and lock all the doors and you cannot leave. So one of the things, number one, is when it's too good to be true, again, it cannot be true. Number two, when somebody asks you to go to a shop for a 90-minute presentation, say, you take back your free gift. I don't want it. Right? But online, it's harder to pressure somebody online.
Yes.
It's always you go to the shop, they lock all the doors, they intimidate you and so on.
Yes.
So if you get an online offer of something that you must go to a shop and physically claim your gift, forget it.
But I find that one way that online sellers can try and exert some pressure is by playing on our fear of missing out. So they say, this is a limited time offer.
Yes.
It is a deal that will expire, within the next hour, or they also play on our, natural way of decision making, where we have certain level of trust for certain people. So you see, investment endorsed by Lee Hsien Loong, by Tharman
Peter
Shanmugaratnam,
Lim.
all these big names,
Yeah.
right?
Peter Lim is a billionaire, right?
That is where they also these tricks to try and play on our psychology. And so we should, as Dr. Toh says, the way to guard yourself is by taking a pause. Right? Don't act out of pressure. Right? You can check with somebody. That is a good way to kind of take a pause and also get another person's view, and that could help you to avoid a difficult situation. But let's try and stand up for ourselves. I know it's not that easy. I'm personally quite a suggestible person. When I go to a restaurant, they'll say, oh, this is recommend. Then I'll be like, oh, okay. But we must learn over time, right?
So
to stand up
the
for
physical part is harder to resist. That's why I say, you are there already in the restaurant. They say, ma'am, this is a very good fish. You miss out if you don't, only one time offered Mother's Day. You're a mother, right? So you got pressure. But yes, I do agree online they can pressure. But you see, the pressures usually, it is an acronym I developed as case president. It's NAIVE, naive. N is negligence. You don't do your homework and you say, oh, like that. Oh, must be true. Okay. Don't trust anybody in the online world. Don't be negligent. A is actually authority. Sometimes we are police, we are FIDReC, we are, MAS governor and all that. So, then your gut goes down.
Yes.
And authority, they throw some authority's name at you. Or even Peter Lim, there are scams, and Lee Hsien Loong and all that. If a billionaire trusts me, why are you not to trust me? Right? The authority.
Yeah.
I is ignorance. Again, it's like, if you're not clued in, sorry, I'm a boomer, but I will tell all boomers, if you're not clued in, don't do it. But unfortunately, I realized that even Gen Z and millennials get scammed too. So it means it leads to the next point, which is vanity and ego. Okay, they play on your ego. V is then vanity and ego. Vanity is, you will be more beautiful, you will get rid of your pimples and acne and all that. But one more thing about A is a big word. It's avarice. Greed. It is very often, this is too good to be true. I must grab it before it goes FOMO, right? But it's actually playing on greed. So just remember that naive acronym, and hopefully you remind yourself, let me not be greedy this time.
Wow, Dr. Toh. I was going to ask, because we are a little bit out of time, I was going to ask us to share one key takeaway. It sounds like Dr. Toh has given us, NAIVE 5 key takeaways for us to always remember. So maybe, Dr. Toh, you think of another key takeaway. Let's ask Eunice to start us off first. What is your key takeaway from this seminar?
Okay, so from the FIDReC perspective, where I focus a bit more on the finance side, I would say one tip, remember, for your online shopping, use secure payment methods, right? If you can pay by a credit card instead, avoid sending over through bank transfer or cash without receiving payment. And the next thing is always do your homework. So buyer beware. When you buy online, we really have to realize that we are living in a world where there is a lot of fraud happening online, offline. And so we really have to beware. And all those tips that I shared earlier from the Cybersecurity Agency or that Dr. Toh shared as well, let's try and keep that in mind.
Thank you, Eunice.
And I would say one major takeaway, I kept mentioning it many times, if it's too good to be true, it is not true.
That's my takeaway as well. If it's too good to be true, there is no free lunch in the world. Always do your homework. I feel like these are nuggets of wisdom, right? Our parents tell us, and then we forget that we should really apply them even to this online shopping space as well.
The world is a wicked place.
Yes, and buyers beware.
Buyers beware.
Always
That's right.
remember that. I think that's our very good takeaway, just in 2 words. So unfortunately, we have to bring our session now to a close. Thank you very much, Dr. Toh, as well as Eunice, for sharing these nuggets of wisdom. At the end of this webinar, for everybody, a survey form will pop up on your screen for your completion. We appreciate every single comment as it will be used to improve our future webinars. There are many more webinars as part of Law Awareness Weeks at CDC 2022. We have other cyber-related webinars like Be Cyber Safe, which is on next Wednesday, 12th of October. So You Want to Be a Social Media Influence on Monday, 17th of October, and Help, I Am a Victim of Online Harms on Wednesday, 26th October. They are all at 7 p.m. Do click on the registration links in the chat or scan the QR code or visit the website bit.ly/lawcdc2022 to find out more about the other webinars available for registration. If you are facing any legal inquiries and you are keen to register for a legal clinic session, you may write to enquiry@lawsocprobono.org. We would like to express once again our gratitude to Dr. Toh and Eunice for sharing your knowledge and experiences with us. With that, we would like to thank all of you for joining us today and have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Jill.
Thank you.